Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA. What if a coin that looks like an ordinary 1-cent piece could actually be hiding a story worth millions? Imagine finding a 1969 D Lincoln penny in an old collection, a forgotten jar, or even loose change, and realizing that the tiny piece of copper-colored metal in your hand might be connected to one of the most fascinating periods in American coin history. Some online coin stories place extraordinary values on rare pennies, including a sensational claim of $18 million for an exceptional 1969 D example. But is every 1969 D penny worth that kind of money? Absolutely not, and that is where the mystery becomes even more interesting. The real question is, what would have to be different about a 1969 D Lincoln cent for collectors to consider it truly extraordinary? Stay with me, because we are going to examine the history, the mint mark, possible errors, condition, rarity, and the clues that could separate an ordinary penny from a potentially remarkable discovery. And before this story is over, I want you to keep watching, because there are 2 more Lincoln pennies coming up in this video, and each one has its own fascinating mystery. I will reveal what makes them interesting, but I am not going to spoil their potential values yet. Now, let us begin with the 1969 D Lincoln penny, a coin from an era when American coinage was going through enormous changes. The year 1969 was an unusual moment in United States history. The country was experiencing major technological, cultural, and economic changes, and at the same time, the United States Mint was producing enormous quantities of everyday coins for circulation. The Lincoln cent itself had already been around for more than half a century, having first appeared in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1969, the familiar portrait of Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse were instantly recognizable to millions of Americans. But here is where collectors become interested. Not every coin produced by a mint is identical in quality. Coins can experience production problems, striking abnormalities, die deterioration, planchet issues, doubling, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, weak details, or other unusual characteristics. And when rarity, condition, authenticity, and collector demand come together, an ordinary-looking cent can become much more interesting. The 1969 D penny carries a small D mint mark beneath the date, identifying it as a coin produced at the Denver Mint. That tiny letter may look insignificant to someone spending the coin at a store, but to a collector, it can immediately tell part of the coin's story. The Denver Mint was one of the major facilities producing circulating United States coinage, and millions of Lincoln cents were struck there. That means simply owning a 1969 D cent does not automatically make someone wealthy. In fact, most circulated examples are common and generally trade for modest amounts depending on condition. So why does the 1969 D Lincoln penny attract attention? The answer lies in the possibility of exceptional pieces. Collectors look closely at the date, mint mark, lettering, Lincoln's portrait, the memorial building, the rim, and the overall surface. They also examine whether unusual doubling or striking characteristics are genuine or simply damage created after the coin left the mint. This distinction is incredibly important. A coin that has been scratched, squeezed, flattened, chemically altered, or damaged in circulation is not necessarily a mint error. In contrast, a genuine mint-made error can sometimes create substantial collector interest. This is why experienced collectors do not simply look at a penny and shout, "Rare." They investigate it. They compare it with known varieties, examine photographs, use magnification, evaluate the surfaces, and, when necessary, submit the coin to professional grading and authentication services. Now, let us talk about the dramatic $18 million figure associated with this coin. You may see sensational videos, posts, or online claims describing a 1969 D Lincoln penny as being worth $18 million. That number should be treated as a claim or hypothetical headline value, not as the normal market value of a 1969 D cent. There is no reason to assume that every coin of this date and mint mark is worth millions. The actual value of a particular coin depends heavily on its condition, rarity, verified errors, or varieties, provenance, and what buyers are willing to pay. That does not make the coin boring, quite the opposite. It makes the hunt more exciting because now the question becomes, what exactly am I holding? Imagine opening an old box of coins that belonged to a parent or grandparent. You begin sorting through wheat cents, memorial cents, nickels, dimes, and quarters. Then suddenly you see a 1969 D penny. At first, it looks ordinary. You turn it under the light. The date is clear. The D mint mark is visible. The surfaces appear unusually sharp. Then you notice something strange around the lettering. Is it doubling? Is it damage? Is it machine doubling? Could it be an unusual die characteristic? That moment is where the real treasure hunt begins. And this is exactly why coin collecting can become so addictive. The value is not always visible at first glance. Sometimes the most important clue is microscopic. A tiny separation in a letter, an unusual shape around a digit, an abnormal rim, or a strange relationship between the design elements can send a collector searching through reference books and databases for hours. The condition of the coin also matters enormously. A heavily circulated 1969 D cent may show scratches, discoloration, worn details, and contact marks. A high-grade example, especially one with attractive surfaces and strong original detail, can be much more desirable. Professional grading can also make a major difference because a certified grade gives buyers a standardized way to understand the coin's condition. But even a high grade alone does not magically turn a common penny into an $18 million coin. Rarity is the key word. If thousands of similar examples exist, collectors have plenty of choices. If an unusual and authenticated error is extremely scarce, demand can rise. This is why the hunt for unusual cents continues today. People search inherited collections, old coin albums, estate boxes, bank rolls, jars, drawers, and forgotten containers where coins may have been sitting for decades. Some discoveries happen because someone knows exactly what they are looking for. Others happen completely by accident. And sometimes the biggest lesson is that you do not need expensive equipment to begin. A good light, a magnifying glass, patience, and reliable reference information can be enough to spot something worth investigating. But there is another warning every treasure hunter should remember: never clean a potentially valuable coin just because it looks dirty. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and may reduce collector appeal. A coin's natural appearance, even when aged, can be part of its identity. Instead of polishing it, handle it carefully by the edges and compare it with trusted references. If you believe you have discovered a genuine error or an exceptionally valuable example, professional authentication is the safest next step. Now imagine the excitement of realizing that the strange feature you noticed is not damage at all, but something created during the minting process. That is when a simple penny becomes a piece of industrial history. Every Lincoln cent passed through a complex manufacturing process involving blank planchets, dies, presses, inspection, and distribution. Mistakes can happen at different stages. A planchet can be improperly prepared. A die can develop problems. A coin can be struck incorrectly. A die can become worn. Two impressions can create unusual-looking details. The challenge for collectors is determining exactly what happened. That detective work is what makes coins like the 1969 D cent so fascinating. The $18 million story may be sensational, but the deeper truth is more valuable for a serious collector. Not every rare coin claim online is accurate, and learning to distinguish a genuine rarity from an exaggerated internet story is one of the most important skills you can develop. So if you have a 1969 D Lincoln penny, do not immediately assume you have a fortune, but do not automatically throw it into a spending pile either. Look closely. Check the date. Check the D mint mark. Examine the condition. Search for documented varieties and genuine mint errors. Compare your coin with trustworthy examples. And remember, the difference between a normal penny and a truly exceptional coin can sometimes be surprisingly small, but proving that difference is what matters. Think about it: a coin with a face value of just 1 cent can carry decades of history in a tiny piece of metal. It may have traveled through stores, cash registers, pockets, drawers, and collections. It may have been saved by someone who simply liked old coins. It may have spent years forgotten in a container before being discovered by someone curious enough to inspect it. And that is the magic of the hobby. You are not just searching for money. You are searching for a story. You are searching for the unusual detail that everyone else missed. You are searching for the possibility that something ordinary is not quite as ordinary as it seems. But before you decide this is the end of today's mystery, remember what I told you at the beginning, there are 2 more Lincoln pennies waiting in this video. The next one comes from a completely different year, and it has its own set of characteristics that collectors watch carefully. Then, after that, we will move to another fascinating Denver Mint Lincoln cent that can make collectors stop and look twice. I am not revealing their values yet, because I want you to stay with me and discover what makes each coin special. Could one of those next pennies have an unusual feature hiding in plain sight? Could an old coin sitting in a family collection turn out to deserve a much closer inspection? That is exactly why you should never judge a penny only by its face value. So, take another look through your coin jar, your old albums, your inherited collections, and those forgotten boxes in the back of a drawer. You might not find an $18 million treasure, and claims like that must always be verified, but you could still discover a fascinating error, a scarce variety, or a high-grade coin that deserves professional attention. The 1969 D. Lincoln penny reminds us that the smallest objects can carry enormous history, and sometimes the greatest discoveries begin with one simple question: what is different about this coin? Keep that question in mind, because the next Lincoln penny is about to take us into another chapter of the search, and trust me, you will want to see what collectors look for when that coin appears. The treasure hunt is only beginning, and the next discovery could be the one that makes you look at your pocket change in a completely different way. Next, 1978 Lincoln penny, and this time, I want you to imagine something very simple. You reach into an old drawer, pull out a handful of pennies, and one coin catches the light just a little differently. It looks ordinary, it feels ordinary, and at first glance, there is absolutely nothing about it that screams treasure. But what if that small 1978 Lincoln cent contains a feature that most people would never notice? What if a tiny minting mistake, an unusual strike, an exceptional grade, or a rare characteristic could make collectors stop and take a second look? Some sensational online coin stories have placed extraordinary figures, including a claim of around $20 million, on exceptionally described 1978 Lincoln pennies, but the reality is far more interesting than simply believing a headline. A normal 1978 penny is not automatically worth millions. The real mystery is discovering what separates an ordinary example from an unusual one, and that is exactly what we are going to investigate. The 1978 Lincoln cent belongs to an important chapter in American coin history, a period when the familiar memorial reverse was still being produced in enormous numbers and pennies were constantly moving through the American economy. Think about how many times a penny could change hands in a single year. It might begin its life at the United States Mint, travel to a bank, move into a cash register, enter someone's pocket, and eventually disappear into a jar or drawer for decades. By the time a collector discovers it, that little coin can carry a history that is completely invisible to the naked eye. The Lincoln cent design had already become one of the most recognizable pieces of American currency by 1978. Abraham Lincoln's portrait appeared on the obverse, facing right, while the reverse showed the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The design was familiar to almost every American, which is one reason collectors sometimes overlook these coins. When people hear the word rare, they often imagine ancient gold coins, silver dollars, or famous pieces locked away in museums. But the truth is that rarity can exist in something as ordinary as a copper-colored cent. And that is where the 1978 penny becomes fascinating. During this era, pennies were struck in enormous quantities, and most examples were intended for everyday circulation. As a result, a regular circulated 1978 Lincoln cent generally does not command an enormous premium. But collectors do not judge every coin solely by its date. They examine condition, strike quality, surface preservation, varieties, and errors. Those details can completely change the story. Imagine two 1978 pennies sitting side by side. One has been carried around for years. Its edges are worn, Lincoln's hair is soft, the memorial details are weak, and the surface contains scratches and dark marks. The other has sharp design details, attractive surfaces, minimal contact marks, and an appearance suggesting it spent most of its life protected from circulation. To an inexperienced person, both are simply 1-cent coins. To a collector, they are two very different objects. This is why condition is one of the most important concepts in coin collecting. A high-grade coin can be far more desirable than an average circulated example, especially when it combines strong eye appeal with scarcity. But here comes another important point: high grade does not automatically mean millions. A coin needs genuine rarity and demand to reach extraordinary prices. That is why anyone claiming a 1978 penny is worth $20 million should be asked a simple question: what documented characteristic makes it worth that amount? Is there a confirmed mint error? Is it a unique variety? Is there a remarkable provenance? Has it actually sold for that price in a documented auction? Without those answers, the number should be treated as a sensational estimate or claim rather than an established market value. This distinction is especially important in today's world, because social media can turn a tiny coin into an overnight mystery. One photograph appears online, someone attaches a gigantic price tag, and suddenly thousands of people begin searching their drawers for the same date. Sometimes there is a real rarity behind the excitement. Other times, the coin is simply a normal example with damage or a misunderstood feature. Learning the difference is where the real skill begins. Take doubling, for example. A doubled design can be exciting, but not every coin with a blurry or shadow-like appearance has true double die characteristics. Mechanical or machine-related doubling can sometimes produce an appearance that looks dramatic but does not carry the same collector significance as a genuine double die. A serious collector examines the shape, position, separation, and relationship of the duplicated elements. The same principle applies to off-center strikes. If a coin was struck away from the normal center of the planchet, the resulting design can appear dramatically shifted, leaving part of the blank surface visible. A significant, genuine off-center error can attract collector interest, especially when the date remains visible. But again, not every unusual-looking edge is a valuable error. Damage after the coin leaves the mint can imitate some types of minting problems. This is why authentication matters. The 1978 Lincoln cent can also be interesting because of its place in the transition between earlier copper-based cents and the later composition changes that would come with the early 1980s. By the late 1970s, the penny had become an essential part of daily commerce, but production costs and metal prices were increasingly important concerns. Collectors studying United States cents often look at these years as part of a broader story about changing coin compositions, manufacturing economics, and American currency. That historical context gives even a common penny significance beyond its spending value. Now picture yourself holding a 1978 penny under a bright lamp. Start with the date. Is it clearly readable? Then look at the mint mark, if present. Next, examine Lincoln's portrait. Look at the lettering, especially the areas around Liberty and "In God We Trust." Turn the coin over and inspect the Lincoln Memorial. Are the columns sharp? Are there unusual lines? Does the rim look normal? Does the edge appear consistent? Is the coin unusually well preserved? These are the kinds of questions that transform casual searching into real coin hunting. And here is where the suspense becomes even stronger. Sometimes the most interesting feature is not something immediately visible. A die characteristic may require magnification. A planchet problem may be easier to identify from the edge. A striking error may become obvious only when the coin is compared with a normal example. A collector may spend several minutes examining something that everyone else would have ignored in less than a second. That patience can make all the difference. Imagine finding the coin in an old family collection. Perhaps your grandfather saved pennies for years, not because he knew they were valuable, but because he simply enjoyed collecting them. Decades later, you open the box. Most of the coins are ordinary. Then you notice a 1978 cent with unusually clean surfaces. You place it beside another 1978 penny, and suddenly the difference becomes obvious. The lettering appears sharper. Lincoln's portrait looks stronger. The color is more attractive. The coin has almost no visible circulation wear. Now you have a reason to investigate. You still do not have proof of a fortune, but you have something just as important, a question. Could this be a high-grade example? Could it be worth preserving? Could it be a variety? Could there be something unusual about its production? Those questions are what drive collectors to learn more. The claimed $20 million figure is therefore best understood as part of the dramatic rare coin storytelling surrounding exceptional specimens, not as the normal value of every 1978 Lincoln cent. If someone offers you millions for a random circulated 1978 penny without authentication or documentation, be extremely cautious. Real collectors and professional buyers examine evidence. They consider the grade, population reports, known varieties, auction records, and market demand. They do not simply accept a number because it appears in a video title. And this is actually good news for beginners, because it means you can protect yourself by learning the basics. You do not need to be an expert on day one. Start by learning how to identify the date and mint mark. Learn what genuine mint errors look like. Learn the difference between wear and damage. Learn why cleaning a coin can hurt its value. Learn how professional grading works. And above all, learn to ask for evidence when you hear an extraordinary price claim. The 1978 cent is also a reminder that value can come from several different sources. Sometimes it is rarity. Sometimes it is condition. Sometimes it is a dramatic mint error. Sometimes it is historical importance. Sometimes it is a combination of several factors. The strongest coins often have multiple reasons for collectors to care about them. A beautifully preserved coin with an unusual and authenticated mint characteristic can be much more interesting than a damaged coin with a random scratch. This is why coin collecting is part science, part history, and part detective work. You are examining physical evidence and trying to reconstruct what happened decades ago. Where was the coin made? How was it struck? What happened to the die? Did the coin leave the mint normally? How did it survive? Why did it remain in such good condition? And why might collectors want it today? Every coin can have a different answer. Now, I want you to remember something from the first coin in this video. We looked at the 1969 D Lincoln penny and saw how a simple date and mint mark can become the beginning of a much bigger investigation. The 1978 penny continues that same idea, but with a completely different chapter of American coin history. And we are still not finished. There is one more Lincoln penny coming up after this, and I am deliberately keeping its potential value out of this part of the story. I want you to discover what makes that final coin so interesting without knowing the number first. Because sometimes the mystery is more powerful than the price tag. So if you are searching your own collection right now, do not just look for a famous date. Look for unusual details. Look for coins that appear different from their normal counterparts. Look for strong strikes, unusual planchets, dramatic off-center strikes, genuine doubling, and exceptional preservation. But always verify before celebrating. A scratch can look like doubling. A dent can look like an error. A stain can make a coin look unusual. And a common coin can sometimes be dressed up by an exaggerated online claim. The smartest collectors slow down. They inspect. They compare. They document. They authenticate. And they protect their discoveries. Imagine the feeling of finding something truly unusual after everyone else had walked past it for years. That is the dream behind every coin hunt. It is not just about becoming rich. It is about discovering something that survived history and recognizing its significance before somebody else does. A 1978 Lincoln penny may have passed through countless hands, sat unnoticed in a cash drawer, traveled across states, or remained hidden inside a collection for generations. It could be completely ordinary, or it could contain a feature worth investigating. That uncertainty is exactly what makes the hobby so exciting. So the next time you see a 1978 Lincoln cent, do not automatically spend it. Turn it over. Look closely. Check the surfaces. Examine the lettering. Study the date and mint mark. Compare it with another example. And if something seems genuinely unusual, preserve it carefully and seek expert guidance. Because the greatest lesson of rare coin collecting is simple: never assume, always investigate. And now, we are getting closer to the final mystery in this sequence. The next Lincoln penny comes from another year, another production story, and another set of possibilities that collectors may find fascinating. I will not reveal its value yet, because I want you to stay with me and see exactly why this next coin deserves attention. Could it have a feature hidden in a tiny area of the design? Could a seemingly ordinary penny contain a clue that most people would completely overlook? We are about to find out. So keep watching, because the final coin is waiting, and this treasure hunt is far from over. Next, 1968 Lincoln penny, and now we have reached the final coin in this sequence, the coin that brings our treasure hunt to its dramatic conclusion. Imagine finding an old penny buried inside a forgotten collection, turning it over in your fingers, and seeing a date from the late 1960s staring back at you. At first, it may look like nothing more than another worn Lincoln cent, another tiny piece of everyday American history. But what if there is something unusual hiding beneath that ordinary appearance? What if the coin's condition, production characteristics, or a genuine mint error could make collectors stop and investigate? Some sensational online claims have attached extraordinary figures, including a claim of around $23 million, to an exceptional 1968 Lincoln penny, but that number should never be treated as the ordinary value of every coin from this date. The real mystery is far more important: what makes one 1968 penny ordinary while another could become a serious collector piece? Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you will know exactly what clues to look for, why the Denver mint mark matters, and why this final penny deserves a closer look. The 1968 Lincoln cent comes from a fascinating period in United States coinage. America in 1968 was experiencing enormous changes, and the nation's coinage was quietly reflecting the demands of a growing economy. Lincoln cents were being produced in huge numbers for everyday commerce, and most were never expected to become collectibles. They were meant to be spent, counted, dropped into vending machines, carried in pockets, and forgotten. Yet decades later, collectors would begin examining these same coins with magnification, comparing tiny differences that the original users could never have imagined were important. That is the strange journey of a coin. At the moment it is produced, it may be worth only 1 cent. Years later, its condition, rarity, and history can make it fascinating. The 1968 cent carries the D mint mark, identifying the Denver Mint as its place of production. That small letter beneath the date is one of the first things collectors check because mint marks help separate coins produced at different facilities. The Denver Mint was a major producer of circulating coinage, and its Lincoln cents traveled throughout the United States. Because many 1968 cents were made, the date and mint mark alone do not make a coin extraordinarily valuable. This is where many new collectors make a mistake. They see an older penny, notice the year, and immediately assume that age equals rarity. But age is not the same as rarity. A coin can be nearly 60 years old and still be common. Another coin from the same period can be scarce because of a specific variety, error, or exceptional condition. The challenge is discovering which category your coin belongs to. Start with the simplest clues. Look at the date. Is the 1968 clearly visible? Is the D mint mark present beneath it? Examine the surfaces. Are they heavily worn, or do they retain sharp original details? Check Lincoln's hair, jawline, coat, and the lettering around the portrait. Then turn the coin over. Study the Lincoln Memorial, the columns, the lettering, and the rim. You are looking for anything that appears inconsistent with a normal example. But remember, unusual does not automatically mean valuable. A coin can become damaged after leaving the mint in countless ways. It can be scratched, hit, squeezed, bent, chemically altered, exposed to harsh environments, or rubbed against other coins. Those post-mint problems can create strange appearances that have nothing to do with an original mint error. That is why experienced collectors ask one critical question: did the mint make it this way? If the answer is yes, and the feature is genuine, documented, and scarce, then the coin may deserve serious attention. Consider the possibility of an off-center strike. During normal production, the planchet should be positioned correctly between the dies. If something goes wrong and the planchet is struck away from the intended center, the design can shift dramatically. Part of the coin may show blank metal while the design appears pushed toward one side. A dramatic, genuine off-center strike can be visually impressive, and collectors often appreciate errors that clearly show how the minting process went wrong. But again, authentication is crucial. A coin that has been intentionally altered after leaving the mint is not equivalent to a genuine production error. Another area collectors examine is doubling. The term double can make any coin sound exciting, but true double die varieties are much more specific than a simple blurry appearance. Genuine double die characteristics originate during the die making process and can show distinctive separation in parts of the design. Mechanical doubling can appear different and may have little premium. Scratches and flattened lettering can create even more confusion. This is why a magnifying glass alone is not enough. You need knowledge, comparison, and sometimes professional examination. Now think about the condition of a 1968 D cent. A coin that spent decades in circulation might have a darkened or brown surface, contact marks, scratches, and worn details. Another example may have been placed into a collection shortly after production and protected from the harsh environment of circulation. That second coin could retain significantly more detail. In the world of numismatics, preservation matters. Collectors often use grading systems to describe the condition of coins, and professional certification can provide an independent assessment. A high-grade example can attract more attention than a heavily circulated coin, especially if the population of similarly graded pieces is low. But once again, condition is only one part of the equation. The market decides value through rarity and demand. If many collectors can easily find thousands of similar coins, prices remain limited. If a particular variety is scarce and collectors compete for the few known examples, the story changes. That is why a headline claiming $23 million should immediately lead to questions rather than excitement alone. Has an example actually sold for that amount? Is the coin authenticated? Is the valuation based on an actual auction record, an estimate, or simply internet speculation? Is the supposed feature recognized by experts? These questions protect collectors from unrealistic claims. The fascination of the 1968 D penny comes from the fact that there are so many ways a small cent can become interesting. It could be unusually well preserved. It could have a recognized variety. It could contain a genuine striking error. It could have an unusual planchet characteristic. Or it could simply be a historically interesting survivor from a particular era. Imagine discovering one inside an old family box. You open the lid and see dozens of pennies scattered together. Some are shiny, some are dark, some are nearly impossible to read. Then you notice one that looks remarkably sharp for its age. You pick it up. The date reads 1968, underneath is the tiny D. You compare it with another coin from the same year. Suddenly, you notice differences. The rim looks stronger. The details seem sharper. The surfaces appear unusually clean. Your heart starts beating faster. Could it be rare? At this stage, the answer is still unknown, but you have reached the most exciting point in the investigation. You have found a reason to research. That is how many collecting journeys begin. A simple observation becomes a question, the question becomes research, and research eventually leads to expertise. The coin itself becomes a teacher. It forces you to learn about minting technology, dies, planchets, striking pressure, grading, varieties, and preservation. And the more you learn, the more fascinating ordinary pocket change becomes. This is why collectors sometimes spend hours examining coins that others would throw into a jar. They know that rarity can hide in tiny details. But there is another major lesson here: never clean the coin. If you believe you have found a potentially valuable 1968 D cent, resist the temptation to polish it, scrub it, soak it, or use household chemicals. Cleaning can leave scratches, remove original surfaces, or create an unnatural appearance that collectors may dislike. Handle the coin gently by its edges and keep it protected. If the coin appears genuinely unusual, seek professional evaluation. A reputable grading or authentication service can determine whether an error or variety is real and can provide a standardized assessment of condition. Now, let us return to the dramatic $23 million claim. If you encounter such a figure online, think of it as a headline designed to create curiosity, not as proof that your coin is worth that amount. The vast majority of 1968 D Lincoln cents are not million-dollar coins. But that does not mean you should ignore them. A genuine error, scarce variety, or exceptional high-grade specimen can still be interesting and potentially valuable relative to ordinary circulation examples. The goal is not to believe every unbelievable number. The goal is to learn enough that you can recognize a genuinely unusual coin when you encounter one. And that skill is worth far more than memorizing sensational price tags. Think about the millions of pennies that have disappeared over the decades. Some were melted or discarded. Some were lost under floors, behind furniture, in gardens, in parking lots, and inside old containers. Some remained in collections. Some were carried across the country. Every surviving coin has traveled through time. A 1968 D cent is not merely a piece of metal. It is a physical survivor from an earlier America. It was produced during a period when the country was rapidly changing, and it has remained here long after the people who first handled it may have forgotten it ever existed. That is what gives old coins emotional value even when their financial value is modest. They connect us to the past. And sometimes, among thousands of ordinary survivors, there is one unusual piece that deserves a closer look. This is where the treasure hunt becomes personal. You might have a coin jar sitting on a shelf right now. You might have inherited a box from a relative. You might have old change stored away because you never got around to spending it. Maybe there is a 1968 D penny in that pile. Maybe it is completely ordinary. Or maybe it contains a feature you have never noticed. You will not know until you look. Take your time. Use good lighting. Compare both sides. Inspect the date and mint mark. Study the lettering. Check the rim and edge. Look for genuine abnormalities rather than random damage. And if something truly seems different, document it before touching or cleaning the coin. Take clear photographs. Compare it with reputable references. Ask knowledgeable collectors. If necessary, submit it for professional examination. That process is much more reliable than trusting an exciting social media headline. And now, because this is the final coin in our sequence, we can look back at the journey. We began with the 1969 D Lincoln penny, a coin surrounded by dramatic stories and extraordinary online claims. Then we moved to the 1978 Lincoln cent, where condition, varieties, and minting characteristics became part of the investigation. And now we have reached the 1968 D Lincoln penny, a coin that brings us back to the importance of mint marks, production history, condition, errors, and authentication. 3 coins, 3 different stories, and 1 powerful lesson: never judge a coin by its face value alone. But also never believe in enormous valuation without evidence. The smartest treasure hunters live between those 2 extremes. They stay curious without becoming careless. They investigate without assuming. They get excited, but they verify. That is how you turn a pile of old pennies into a genuine collecting adventure. So if you are watching this with a handful of coins beside you, stop for a moment. Look at them differently. That penny you were about to spend might be common. It might be damaged. It might be worth only a little more than face value. But perhaps, hidden among those ordinary pieces, there is an unusual survivor waiting to be recognized. And even if you never discover a fortune, you may discover something equally valuable: a connection to history. A coin can tell you when it was made, where it was produced, what technology was used, and how America was changing at the time. It can inspire you to learn, research, compare, and preserve the past. That is the true magic of coin collecting. The greatest treasure is not always the biggest price. Sometimes it is the moment when you realize that something everyone else ignored has a story worth telling. So keep searching, keep learning, and most importantly, keep looking closely. Because the next time a Lincoln penny lands in your hand, do not ask only, "What is this worth?" Ask the better question: what makes this coin different? That question could lead you to a fascinating discovery, a rare variety, a genuine mint error, or simply a piece of American history that deserves to be saved. And that is where our journey ends, not with a promise that every old penny is a millionaire's treasure, but with something much more powerful: the knowledge that extraordinary stories can hide inside ordinary objects. The 1968 Lincoln penny may look tiny, but its history is enormous, its possibilities are fascinating, and its mystery reminds us that sometimes the hunt itself is the real treasure.